Yeah.
Epic, because I'm streams of Epic. I can report you to Epic.
I report you to Epic. I just hold the wall,
Thank you, Default. You were very kind.
You're lucky,
Oh, shit. Why are all of them teaming up on me?
No, Apple.
No, can you help me? Apple, can you help me? They keep killing me.
Apple don't.
Apple, help me.
And
Apple, please help me. No, Apple, what is wrong with you?
But he's calling everyone stupid.
Why they're not being nice to me?
Kill the default. It's the default's not on our team for this call.
You were pushing
Sorry, Apple. Yes, I gotta breathe.
Are you trying to show off? Oh shit!
What is just fire? Oh my god, flip someone but 200. What is this going?
You weren't good.
I flipped them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on
I flipped you. Who else is here? That has been more.
You can't just get more kids in your team.
Oh yeah, he's low. He's a little kid.
Oh wow, I just clapped all of you as you got.
Not clapping anyone, you little kid.
I just clapped all of you except the default. Saying it wasn't even good. Oh, you're gonna clap me.
You just got clapped.
Oh, you never killed me though. It was the other kid.
You just got clapped. You got clapped.
You never clapped me. The other kid did.
I'm all good. Just so happy.
I don't have any kills. I'm only on 27. Ah! Default, save me!
Kill him. Kill him. He's little boy. He's down here.
Stupid kid. Try. I'll go try hard.
Yeah, don't kill me, Apple. That's me.
I don't care with you, I'm gonna kill you. No, I don't like killing you.
He's my poster, that's why I was trying to protect you from her.
He tried to kill you and I just saved you. Jeez.
Wait, no, you killed him. What are you on about? You little...
Yeah, he tried to kill you, so I killed him. Sorry, you dummy. But you're good. When your mama's dead.
What? Your mama? I come down.
Take me down. How are you going to kill me?
You better not stop that.
Oh, they don't show it. There's only one place that shoots Ginny Taylor. Okay, Josie, can you hop off and...
What?
Can you hop off
in, yeah, I'll just quickly check the item shop. Yo, my viewer, I will be back. Oh, just wait. I'll be back in like 15 minutes. Just come back in 15 minutes if you want to watch my stream. Alright, see ya.
What's a riser, Kai?
The Prime Minister will provide an update on the New Zealand cases and any changes to the alert levels. But first, let's take a look at the latest developments. Auckland is due to move from alert level 3 to alert level 2 at 11:59 tonight, while the rest of the country is set to remain at level 2. There were 13 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday, including 2 imported and 11 in the community. Now, 10 of those cases are linked to the Auckland cluster. One remains
Has he got a
under
bar
investigation.
extended, Kai?
11 people are in hospitals across Auckland, including 3 people in intensive care. Now, tomorrow, masks will become mandatory on public transport right across the country.
Kai, it's got
We'll
higher
take you to that
bars.
press conference at the Beehive as soon as it gets
Has
underway.
he got
But
higher
first,
bars?
let's go to our reporter Rosie Gordon, who is standing by in the Beehive. Rosie, we had 13 new cases yesterday.
So it's a taller handlebar, Kai. It's an extender, basically. Do you need a taller one? Does he have a taller one?
There were 0 cases. This time around, we have seen many more community cases. But the Health Minister has said, and this will come as a relief to those businesses that have really struggled with the lockdown, that we don't need to see 0 cases this time around, but rather that it's a matter of being able to link those community cases back to those pre-existing clusters. So for the government, that really is the focus this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just businesses, but pretty much everyone in Auckland's pretty keen to go down to alert level 2. But what are the experts saying about Auckland's move?
Yeah, well, we spoke to Sean Hendy yesterday, and he said, while those cases can be linked back to these pre-existing clusters, it's still obviously concerning that we're having these positive tests in the first place. And he said that the problem with, of course, moving back to level 2 when we still have a high number of community cases is that the risk is of yo-yoing back to level 3 again is of course increased. But the Health Minister has said that they canvass a wide range of health advice on this sort of thing and on these decisions, and what he has indicated is really that it will be a matter of only going back to level 3 if a case pops up that isn't able to link back to those clusters.
Yeah, Rosie, there's been a plea this morning for a large number of Aucklanders to get tested, even if they aren't symptomatic. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this is curious. So on the government's Unite Against COVID-19 Facebook page last night, they put out a post asking for all people in West and South Auckland, even if they're not symptomatic, to get tested for COVID-19. This was met from Facebook with Facebook users with some sort of panic and a little bit of shakiness and confidence there. But there are more than 500,000 people in both West Auckland and South Auckland, and the Health Minister has said that they've been testing around 10,000 people a day. So a plea for all of those people to get tested is possibly a little bit unrealistic.
Well, we're going to go to the press conference with the Prime Minister as soon as it begins. We're still waiting for that to begin. It looks like the Prime Minister might be heading in just behind you soon. So just very briefly, masks are going to be mandatory on public transport from tomorrow. Can you just quickly explain how that will work, Rosie?
That's right, Tom. Bring your mask if you're going to get on on a bus, a train, a ferry and even a plane. It will be mandatory from tomorrow for people to wear masks on the public transport. This can be a mask or it can simply be a face covering. There can be some exemptions, and we've heard that New Zealand perhaps doesn't have a culture of face mask wearing, so this could be a little bit of a teething issue on public transport tomorrow.
Thank you very much. That's Rosie Gordon there live from Parliament. It looks like the Prime Minister has just made her way into that press conference. We will go live to that now for the latest.
Kia ora koutou katoa and good afternoon everyone. I want to spend a little time this
Lucinda's
afternoon
just got on the podium,
going over where we are to date with the current cluster in Auckland. I'll then remind people of the restrictions that will be in place from midnight tonight for Aucklanders and of course then the rest of the country. But before we do that, I'll hand over to Dr. Caroline McElnay, our Director of Public Health, for an update on our case numbers for today. Dr. McElnay.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Tēnā koutou katoa. There are 2 new cases of COVID-19 to report in New Zealand today.
What?
Both are cases in the community and both have epidemiological links to the Auckland cluster. One new case is a household contact of a previously confirmed case associated with the Finance Now workplace. The other new case is associated with an existing Tokoroa case. This new case was reported yesterday evening and is a healthcare worker who works at a medical centre in Tokoroa. It is believed they came into contact with the existing case on the 17th of August. As per usual protocols, a test was carried out following exposure, which returned a negative result. The positive result was picked up on a second test when the person became unwell.
There's no point in going to get a test.
The medical centre they work at is closed pending further contact tracing and is undergoing a deep clean.
Yay, thank you.
The centre had been operating under level 4 precautions with PPE use, telehealth and patient screening.
You do kind of as you told.
The potentially infectious period for this case was between the 25th to the 27th of August. The case, who lives alone and has no household contacts, has been in isolation since the 27th of August. Contact tracing is actively underway, which includes contacting staff and patients of the medical centre. 2 testing sites are available in Tokoroa today. The first is at Tokoroa Hospital and is open until 3 p.m. The second is at South Waikato Pacific Islands Community Services and is open until 5 p.m. If you are in Tokoroa and have concerns about whether you need to be tested, please contact Healthline 0800 358 5453 or your doctor and have a test if it is offered. Since the 11th of August, our contact tracing team have identified 2,587 close contacts of cases, of which 2,475 have been contacted and are self-isolating, and we are in the process of contacting the rest. There are 138 people linked to the community cluster who have been transferred to the Auckland quarantine facility, which includes 86 people who have tested positive for COVID-19 and their household contacts. There are 10 people with COVID-19 in hospital today, 2 in Auckland City, 3 in Middlemore, 3 in North Shore and 2 in Waikato. 8 people are on a ward and 2 are in ICU, 1 each in Middlemore and Waikato hospitals. There are 2 previously reported cases who are considered to have recovered today. With today's new cases, this means our total number of active confirmed cases remain at 136, plus 1 previously reported probable case remains active. Of the 137 active cases, 20 are imported cases in MIQ facilities and 117 are community cases. Our total number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 is now 1,378, and that's the number that we report to the World Health Organization. And just on testing, yesterday our laboratories processed 10,487 tests for COVID-19, bringing the total number of tests completed to date to 750,808.
That's a lot.
Widespread testing remains a critical part of eliminating COVID-19 in our communities, And our advice remains, if you develop symptoms consistent with COVID-19, wherever you are, contact Healthline or your doctor immediately and arrange for a test. Details about where to get tested both in Auckland and in the rest of the country are on the Ministry's website. And if you are offered a test for COVID-19, please take it. To help speed up the process, it's helpful if you have your National Health Index number with you. And on our website there's details of how you can find out what your number is. And reminder, COVID-19 test is free of charge.
No, we're not.
And lastly, on the COVID tracer, New Zealand COVID tracer has now recorded 1,940,800 registered users. There have been 336,785 posters created and 25,954,068 poster scans to date. And in addition, there have been just under 2 million manual diary entries recorded in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McElnay. And you'll have heard from the update. We still do have cases coming through from our current cluster in Auckland, and we do expect that will continue. Today's cases, for instance, are contacts from right at the beginning of the outbreak. That shows two things: the vigilance we need to keep applying, but also the fact the tail of this cluster, as we've said before, will be long. Here is what the science tells us about this cluster as well. Analysis from ESR shows that to date, cases have been what they call genomically linked. That means we know that they have come from the same single source, and we can feel confident about that. Over the course of this outbreak, we've undertaken a huge amount of testing. 268,401 tests, in fact. In that time, the only case that hasn't been genomically linked, you'll recall, was Elridge's maintenance worker, and that case was well contained and isolated. That means we are still dealing with a single source and a single cluster. While the source of the cluster has yet to be identified, genomic analysis tells us that the starting point for this outbreak was the Americold site in Mount Wellington. While there could well be another case in that chain that came before this one, it has not been detected to date. No links have been found with genomes currently available from cases in managed isolation facilities. And our sweep of border staff also hasn't resulted in any evidence to show the source of the outbreak, if there is one, beyond Americold.
Or we're offered a test, okay?
Yes. I want to turn quickly to the latest information on this cluster. We've continued with wide testing and isolation, as Dr. McElnay has pointed out, to contain what have been some of the newer elements of the outbreak. Obviously, some of the newer elements include the group around the Mount Roskill Evangelical Church. It is highly likely we will see more cases through that proactive testing, which includes contacts of contacts, so a very wide sweep is taking place there. Casual contacts. But as you'll see from the Alert Level 2 framework that we set early on in our fight against COVID, we did anticipate being in Level 2 while having to stamp out a cluster like this one. In fact, the description for the Alert Level 2 framework does list limited community transmission and active clusters as one of the possibilities while we're in Alert Level 2. And here is probably then the most important message I will share today. Our system is good. It is designed to keep us on track with our elimination strategy at Level 2 in the scenario we now have. But it will only work if people follow the guidance. I understand that it is easy to become complacent, that if you hear a message that there are just, for instance, as we did today, 2 cases, you may question what the likelihood is of you coming into contact with those 2 cases. Everyone, I'm sure, who has experienced COVID-19 probably thought that same thing at some point until it was them. And so for Auckland, I want to say thank you for all of your efforts to date, but also keep going. You can
Sorry,
see
the switch is
from
back. I just need to keep it so it
this
doesn't
map,
pulsating.
which depicts where we have had cases in Auckland, that there is no corner that has been untouched by this cluster.
Jeez.
That's why the rules are for everyone, and we need
That's
everyone
Albany,
to
isn't
stick
it? That
to them,
massive green
no
one?
matter where in Auckland you are.
No.
Yeah, it is.
So a quick reminder of what
No, we have
changes
the
at
outside.
midnight tonight.
That's where we go to
For
scooter.
New Zealand as a whole,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
remain
Not
at
scooter,
level 2.
That's Woodview.
For Auckland, you are at a form of level 2 that I am going to call level 2.5. Here is what it
Hang on,
means.
here's 2.5.
First,
Listen.
social gatherings are limited to 10. That means everything. Birthdays, social gatherings, family gatherings, even friends or neighbours. No gathering can be larger than 10. I cannot stress how important this is. Much of this cluster has stemmed from social gatherings. If we want to stop the spread, we have to stop socialising for a
So you
time.
can't go to church.
If you are a business and have any questions on what this means for you, revert back to the protocols you used the last time we stepped into level
God
2.
doesn't do
The
anything.
expectations are the same for those limits. And as was the case when we had these restrictions in the past, there will be a limit of 50 people for an authorised funeral or tangihanga. But there are some differences from the way we did things last time, and mask use is one of them. From tomorrow, masks will be mandatory on all public transport for anyone 12 years and older across the country while we have level 2 restrictions in place. A bus ride was the source of cases in this cluster and is one of the few settings where people are in close proximity for a sustained period of time with people they do not know. And on masks generally, please wear them, Auckland.
Yeah.
If you go to a shop, wear a mask. If you go to a mall, wear a mask. Basically, when you step out of your home, we are asking you if you can please wear a mask. This will be one of the key ways we can protect you and those around you. Some will ask why we haven't mandated the use of masks beyond public transport.
Well, they can
I will not rule out mandating their use in the future if we see people failing to use them as we are encouraging them to do right now. In this level 2.5 in Auckland, we are also keeping aged care facilities on very strict settings. To those this affects, I am sorry. I know how hard this will be, but we need to keep everyone in our aged care facilities safe. If you want to find out what those more strict settings are and how they'll affect you or your loved ones, please do contact the aged care facility where you have a loved one there. And here, it's important to note, these aren't just rules for the City of Auckland. These are guidelines for Aucklanders. We are asking you to apply them no matter where you are in the country. If you are an Aucklander, please don't just pop into an aged care facility no matter where it is in the country. Please don't attend a mass gathering, even if it's not in Auckland. And if you are sick, stay home. Definitely don't travel. Here, we are relying on common sense and care rather than enforcement to make this work when it comes to Aucklanders who are travelling. Our testing shows that it is highly unlikely there is COVID anywhere else in the country, and we want to keep it that way. The last thing we want from reopening Auckland is to spread the virus around the country, and it is one of the reasons we continue to have level 2 settings across New Zealand. I know that these new normals will take a little while to get used to, but these are measures that are in place for a good reason. Our testing regime is good. Our contact tracing system is very good, but they will only work if we all play our part to support them. Our collective health and livelihood is in each other's hands, so we owe it to everyone to abide by the rules to stop any further spread and do what we have done before, get case numbers down and enjoy the freedoms at level 1 once more. In addition to these requests of all of you, we are also continuing to step up our ongoing response as a government. The display of the New Zealand COVID Tracer QR code is mandatory. And so I urge everyone to use it. Businesses are doing their part by displaying them. I encourage you to use them. It helps support our contact tracing. When we contact trace, there will be more occasions now where contacts of contacts will be asked to isolate and be tested. This is to match a step down in alert levels and the extra precautions we need to apply. We do want to continue to keep up our testing rate, so here is the ask. If you have cold symptoms, get a test. If you have flu symptoms, get a test. We will also keep up testing on people who have no symptoms as part of our surveillance, and we'll do that through the Ministry of Health. I hope this gives you a good sense of what we are asking of everyone. We have some way to go. We will step up levels again if we need to, but if everyone plays their part, we can stamp out this outbreak as part of our elimination strategy with the measures we are all being asked to follow today. So a final reminder again, wash your hands regularly. If you have cold or flu symptoms, get a test. Stay home if you're sick. If you're in Auckland, I strongly encourage you to wear a mask. If you take public transport, you must wear a mask. We remain in a strong position relative to the rest of the world, with lower numbers of cases, with a strong public health system. But that will only take us so far. We need the team of 5 million to help us get back where we need to be. Our system is only as good as our people, and our people are amazing. If anyone can do this, New Zealand can. Happy to take your questions.
The National Māori Pandemic Group has just put out a release saying it's too early for Auckland to move out of level 2 because there are simply too many cases in the community. What can you say to reassure them?
Yeah, and my message would be, actually our alert level framework is built for an elimination strategy that still has cases in the way that we do at the moment, all attached to a cluster. But you'll see, we have stepped up our expectations on Auckland and Aucklanders, and we've also stepped up the work that we're doing as a government and as the health system to make sure that we're meeting the challenges of this current cluster. Yep, feel free. Another question?
Why was the call put out last night online for West Aucklanders with no symptoms to get tested?
That's a good question.
I put that down to, I was made aware of that this morning. I would put that down to oversimplified communication. That is not the ask coming from health officials currently. As I set out, our ask is if you have cold symptoms, get a test. If you have flu symptoms, get a test. And of course, if you have any connection to those involved in this cluster, we have been asking also people to get a test. From what I understand of that message that has gone out, the detail within the message was correct. Some of the top line headings were simply oversimplified and they were wrong.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
So Josh, good news. The communication was wrong. All West Aucklanders and South Aucklanders don't have to get a test. The Prime Minister said the messaging was wrong. It's only if you've got flu-like symptoms.
And making sure that, of course, we're correcting that. Within, I'm told, I haven't seen it, but within the message itself, I'm told the details were correct. The top line messaging was simply oversimplified and it was incorrect. So we will keep correcting that. Essentially, the messaging we've been putting out still stands. We'll be working with the Ministry of Education, Health and others to make sure where there are concerns that we're addressing those as quickly as we can. We've also, as I understand, the All of Government Group has gone out to media outlets to help support the correction of that messaging as well.
What has that messaging caused in the community?
Well, I can tell you for me, it's caused me to be incredibly angry. We have to be very clear in our communication. We have to be very direct in our asks. And you'll see that in a very dynamic environment, by and large, we're able to be very, very consistent. I think ultimately what's happened here is that there's been an attempt to keep a message simple, and it's just been done badly.
What's it caused in the community? Why does it make you angry?
Because it's made an ask that was not correct. We are not asking every single person in West and South Auckland to get a test. That is not our ask. That's not what we're encouraging. We're asking people who have cold symptoms, who have flu symptoms, and if they have any connection to the cases that we are currently very focused on, those are the individuals we want tested. We do have asymptomatic testing that is going on in certain environments, and we will keep that up, but we are not asking over 700,000 New Zealanders to get a test without reason at this point in time.
Really? Good boy, Jossie. Well done, you.
No, it
You're
was
not
a
quite
mistake.
halfway there, but
So no,
$80
it's not
out of
about that at all. In
130,
fact,
it's about two-thirds.
yesterday on a
And
day
it's
where
only been 1 week.
traditionally we tend to have lower numbers,
I've got
we
more. If
had
you'd go and deal
very
with
good
the spider
solid
webs, no
numbers at
spiders.
that 10,000 mark. So no, it's not a demonstration of that at all.
When I get home
It seems
tomorrow,
like
I'll do
there's
the
been a lot of
painting.
confusion around something because
Well,
it's
it's
pretty
really just
critical.
that one.
Jason,
And
if you
he'll
can
be
certainly
like,
help
I might
us
even
with
do it
this
from
issue,
work.
we do need to make
Okay,
sure
you can
that
do
we
your
get
drums.
correct
I'll do the
messaging out, and we will keep
Yeah, and the
asking
drums.
for that
Yeah.
support. I'm working very hard to establish what happened here, because
Yeah,
we do
with
need to make sure our
very
messages
light
are nice
water,
and
Josh.
clear.
I mean, by your own
Only a
admission, it
little
was
bit
a
of water.
mistake, and you only heard about it this morning when it went out yesterday. So surely there needs to be some sort of apology.
So one of the issues we have, of course, is that not all of the comms is individually signed off by me. There need to be processes in place that make sure that we have those who are, of course, very deeply embedded in all of the messaging we're asking, particularly from a health perspective, to make sure they're totally involved in the process for signing off communication, to make sure we don't have the oversimplification of messaging, because that's what's happened here.
So this has been worked to make sure this never happens again.
Oh, that has to be the case. That's my expectation. I've made my views very, very clear with those involved today about what my expectations are, because we just can't afford to have messages like that go out incorrectly. Yeah, I'll come over here.
Signed off on the communication.
So the Unite Against COVID-19 is run through the All of Government group. So essentially that's who I'll be working with to make sure that we don't have anything like this happen again. It is a separate process. Of course, there's been previously issues have been raised around making sure it's a completely apolitical process. Doesn't involve particularly in this period of time, it's very strictly and tightly kept within officials groups. So we will be making sure though that within that the processes are in place to make sure it's checked by everyone who needs to check it.
People in South and West
I'll just canvass around anyone who hasn't taken the question. I know, yeah.
You say today you're angry, it's a mistake. Why didn't you front foot it then today in your statement before the questions and say, look, this was an error, this was a mistake?
Oh, look, I certainly knew I'd have that opportunity in questions, and I've set out what our testing regime is. So it's very, very clear on what I've said today, what our expectations are, and I had every anticipation that you'd give me a chance to then talk about the incorrect comms. It's always a line call, and restating a mistake, you amplify it. I want to make sure that people hear very clearly what our ask is of them. It is that if you have cold and flu symptoms, or if you're connected to any of these cases, that's where we need testing.
It's a bit of a big part for the government today, isn't it?
We need to figure this out, had talks.
I've been doing that since this morning, so you can rest assured we will get to the bottom of that, but actually the most important thing is what we tell people now.
When did the message go out? I mean, you say it's on the onus for the media companies to correct it. Did you go to them
No,
personally?
I'm asking for your support to correct it, not onus, because ultimately you've told a story around a piece of comms that we need to correct.
Right, but did you go proactively to some of the major news sites and say, this is wrong, or did you wait for this opportunity?
So earlier today, on a phone call with the All of Government group, I asked them to very proactively make sure that they were, as a team, going in and contacting those who were reporting on it to make sure that they were utterly clear on what the actual ask is. And also, from this morning, I've been working on the processes that are in place that allow this situation to happen to make sure we can correct that too.
Any concern that testing stations might be overloaded as a result of this?
Not that I've had reported to me, and I'm sure again if we can get that message out nice and clearly, and again, as I understand it, and I haven't seen the piece of communication, but as I have asked how far and wide it's gone and on what channels it was shared, but as it's been explained to me, the information within the body was correct. It was simply the headline that wasn't. Yeah.
And South and West Auckland are being asked to get tested. Are they also expected to self-isolate until they get their test results back if they are?
So, of course, again, we're not asking everyone in West and South Auckland to do a blanket test, but I'll hand over to Dr. McInerney to see where there is a difference in when if you're symptomatic, we ask you to isolate, but we need more general testing.
Main idea, but just different
Yes,
things.
certainly. It's like trying to get a different answer, eh?
You should self-isolate until you have the results of that test. There may be some other specific examples or situations where the public health unit is doing some local contact tracing, in which case they will advise you to self-isolate. until your results are available. But outside of those, generally, if you're asymptomatic and have been tested, you wouldn't need to self-isolate.
What was the Ministry's advice to Cabinet regarding any potential extension of the lockdown? Did you say that it needed to be the level 3 lockdown in Auckland? Did you or Dr. Blue?
Oh, just on process, if I can, Jason, and then we can see if there's there wasn't, remember this decision was made from an earlier Cabinet meeting on Monday. Cabinet has not reconvened. We've very clearly set out there that if things continued as we anticipated with this particular cluster, and they have, that we would still retain those settings. So Cabinet did not reconvene, and so there was no further reconsideration. But I'll hand over to Dr. McElnay to expand on anything further from House view.
From health perspective,
she's encouraging us to wear masks, but it's not mandatory.
An outbreak that is generally 2.5. We only have one case that is not connected to
split it in half.
I know, but like, there may be some further cases that would continue to occur within the community.
2.5, they're doing it.
Level of comfort with the control of the cluster is high, and our consideration is that our existing public health systems and protocols can effectively deal with any further cases and the management of those cases and their contacts.
I think it is important to keep in mind that we did anticipate being in the place we're in now when we made this decision. You remember we said Auckland will have different settings. There will be gathering limits. We have, of course, stepped up our expectation on mask. That's all been in anticipation of this cluster running as exactly as it is now. So we put those in from the beginning of the decision. Nothing about the cluster has therefore changed, except the fact that we are reiterating why Auckland is in a 2.5 situation.
Their property is like really cheap, and I wanted
to ask them to put up the message to
thanks.
Just not much smarter, won't it? Government group. Yeah.
As of 1/26, the Unite Against COVID Instagram page still has the important message about if you're in South or West Auckland, please have a test. So why is that still coming from the social media accounts?
That's something I would have to put to them. I've certainly been very clearly advised that needs to come down, because as Health have reiterated, that is not the message we have asked. So they've been advised of this some hours ago, so I'll be following up on that again. But again, I do appreciate the help of everyone in this room to make sure we get that clear and consistent messaging out there as we intend. Yeah.
Where's Kai's Google thing? No, stop, Kai, don't.
So, of course, it is now part of a health
Shut
order.
up now,
so there
mother.
is a very clear expectation that people be wearing masks. We will be mindful, and we've worked alongside transport providers to make sure that in these early stages we're working to really support people around masks and face coverings. So they have some tools, they have options available to them that if people have nothing, they can support people so that we don't have people stranded as a result of not having masks and face coverings. That won't be, of course, forever, but in these early days we want to create an environment where we support people to hear and learn about what we're asking, but also comply. Yeah.
Last time we went down from alert level 3 to 2, we had 3 days of 0 cases.
Yeah.
Now we've got a handful in Auckland. Is your decision a political one or a health one?
Not at all. In fact, one of the reasons that I wanted to actually share again the framework was to be clear that actually this framework, you know, this hasn't as its core changed.
Just have a look.
This has been the same.
They're on someone else's property,
and
not
within
ours.
that, we have talked about there being community transmission and active clusters. And so that's what the framework is designed for. We have added a layer to it, so for Auckland we're very mindful of the status of the cluster at the moment. That's why they have extra restrictions.
No!
Version of 2.5
I got one
because of that.
standby.
But the framework's always been designed like that.
I got one
Ever have we made a political decision in the management of COVID-19. We have made health-based decisions and evidence-based decisions because that's the best way we support our economy, and I'm going to stick with that model of decision making.
On that, I mean, why is it that you mandated the use of why? But you did say that you wanted everyone to do something. You didn't quite
I go find my mask in the car, but I don't.
And you probably will have picked up from the requirement, and I will have Dr. McElnay to speak to this as well, but one of the things, of course, from even mandating the use of public transport, there are a range
just annoying.
Asking the same questions over and over again.
Yeah.
Anyone else hop online?